Hi guys, Raphterra here. I hope that you are having an awesome 2021 as always. For today, I'm back with a different type of video. As many of you should know, we are now in reveal season for the Bandle City expansion, which we should be expecting to be released next month. And with that in mind, the topic for the video today are the top 5 cards that have been revealed so far in the Bandle City expansion. Please do note that all of these are just my own opinion. You might have a different opinion compared to me. So if that happens, please let me know in the comment section. I love to discuss these types of things. Also, we have more new cards to be revealed in the next 2 weeks. So by the time that you watch this video, some of the newer cards that have been revealed might not be included in my list. My list includes cards that have been revealed up to the Lulu reveal, which happened last night. And with that out of the way, let's start with the list. The first card in the list is Aloof Travelers. Aloof Travelers is a 4-mana 3/4 Yordle that has the text, "When I'm summoned, both players draw 1, then your opponent discards their highest cost card." This card is super powerful for several reasons, and the main reason is that inherently, this is just a +1 card advantage for the player who played it. The main reason for that is that for 4 mana, you get a 3/4 body on board, and you draw 1. So you didn't really lose anything. You use the card and you draw 1. Meanwhile, your opponent draws 1 and discards 1. Some of you might not be able to understand immediately why this one is instantly +1 card advantage for you. So just to illustrate how powerful this card is, let's say that you have 2 cards in hand and your opponent has 2 cards in hand with an empty board. So you play Aloof Travelers and draw 1, so you now have 1 card on board and 2 cards in hand. So just by playing Aloof Travelers, you now effectively have a +1 card advantage to your opponent. You have 1 card on board and 2 cards on hand, and your opponent only has 2 cards. And then the second thing that makes this card overpowered in my opinion, in addition to giving you +1 card advantage, it's also discarding your opponent's highest cost card. So that high cost card is usually a win condition for most decks. So let's say that could be a Lee Sin, an Aurelion Sol, a War Mother's Call, or a Feel the Rush. For these 4 cards that I mentioned, all of these are kind of the win conditions or the build around of decks that play them. For Lee Sin, if you're able to discard the Lee Sin will most likely lose the game if they don't draw another copy. And for Aurelion Sol, if you're building a deck around Aurelion Sol, you're waiting for the late game because you want to play your big dragon, but then Aloof Travelers just discard it. Same with War Mother's Call or Feel the Rush decks. Usually those decks want to ramp up and cast these spells as early as possible, but you can shut down their strategy with Aloof Travelers. Just to give you an example of some decks that we already have in the meta that can run this card are Ezreal Draven and Karma Ezreal. Ezreal Draven historically has been weak to Lee Sin or War Mother's Call or SI Freljord control decks, but if they run Aloof Travelers, having the ability to discard your opponent's win condition might just win you the game if you're playing Ezreal Draven. Another card is Karma Ezreal. Karma Ezreal is a control deck that just wants to get value as much as possible. So I think Aloof Travelers is a card that will be run in that deck just because of the +1 card advantage that it gives you. And if you're facing some mid-range and control decks, you can just discard their win condition or the card that they will usually finish you off before you go online with your Karma and Ezreal. I believe that this card might get nerfed in the balance patch right after the expansion is released. This card is insanely broken. The second card in my list is Otterpus and Prank. So Otterpus is a 1 mana 1/1 attune that has a text, "When I'm summoned, create a prank in hand." And if you're not yet familiar, Prank is a focus spell generated by many other prank cards, and its text says, "Pick one of 2 non-champion cards in the enemy's hand or deck and prank it." Regarding the pranks, a Riot developer on Twitter mentioned the list of pranks that you can do. So for units, you're able to add +2 cost, -2 power, -1 power plus can't block, and -1 power and vulnerable. And for spells and landmarks, you can increase their cost by 2 permanently. And I hope just by reading these effects, you know how powerful this card is, because you're effectively nerfing the cards. You're effectively doing a balance patch in the middle of the game. What do I mean by this? Well, historically, you know that Riot has been buffing and nerfing cards during balance patches. They usually nerf the cards that are too strong. But with pranks now, Riot gave us the ability to nerf cards within the game. You can render a lot of cards useless. So for example, just to illustrate that example, let's say that you're able to prank a River Shaper and you give it -2 power or +2 cost. Suddenly, your opponent has a dead card. He has an unplayable card with River Shaper. Another example, let's say that you're facing a Tamkench Soraka deck with Star Spring. On turn 1, you can just prank their Star Spring, giving it +2 cost. Suddenly, it's a 4 cost Star Spring, which is literally unplayable. You never want to play Star Spring for 4 mana. To give you another example for a spell, let's say you're facing a ramp deck with Anivia or Field Rush or War Mothers. You can just prank the Catalyst of Eons, which they usually want to play on turn 3 in order to ramp up. Give it +2 cost. Suddenly, Catalyst of Eons is now 7 cost, which is literally unplayable for the deck. Just a reminder, with Otterpus, the things that I mentioned, you can do that on turn 1. So a lot of games will be decided on turn 1 Otterpus. You summon Otterpus, because of the attune, you get 1 mana back, you cast Prank, you can literally make one of their cards just instantly dead, gone, just like that. And if you think about it that way, you can kind of think about it as +1 card advantage, because if you're able to prank one of your opponent's win conditions or one of your opponent's cards, you're making it unusable, which means they have a card in hand that they don't really want to play. The prank mechanic will be super fun to play and will be very annoying to play against. I think a lot of people will be hating on Bandle City as soon as it's released. I'm already predicting the hate that people will have for Otterpus and pranks. I can already predict it. So most likely, this card will also get nerfed immediately. For the third card in our list, this is actually the first champion card in our list, and it's the only champion that has been revealed so far as of the recording of this video. The third card is our Yordle from Demacia, Poppy. Poppy is a 4 mana 4/3 from Demacia and Bandle City as a dual region that has the dex attack, grant me, grant means permanent, grant me and all allies with equal or less power than me, +1/+1. And she levels up when she's attacked with allies 3 times, and then her level 2 text says, Poppy, impact, grant me and all allies with equal or less power than me, +2/+2, and impact. So just by looking at Poppy, you can definitely conclude that Poppy is a playable card at least, but if you think more about it, the more that Poppy becomes stronger. Because Poppy is basically a Vanguard Bannerman plus Legion Marauders, all in one card. Remember, the grant is permanent. Usually, you're paying for that cost with Vanguard Bannerman. With Vanguard Bannerman, you would need to make your deck an Allegiance deck, which means that you should only run Demacia cards. But with Poppy now in the game, you render Vanguard Bannerman useless. You never want to play Vanguard Bannerman on turn 4 over Poppy. And of course, it's like the effect of Legion Marauders. Legion Marauders only buffs itself and other Legion Marauders everywhere. But with Poppy, you buff all the cards in your board. So this will already be very strong for Demacia decks, like Elite decks that usually run Penitent Squire or Honored Lord, Scout decks with Misfortune and Valor, and maybe support decks with Lulu and Fleet Feather Tracker. Keep in mind that Lulu is now a dual region card with Ionia and Bandle City, so you can run Lulu in a Demacia Bandle City deck. Lulu will be amazing with Fleet Feather Tracker or any challengers from Demacia, so that's a lot of deck building possibilities. Also, Poppy being a dual region with Bandle City, you can actually pair up Lulu and Poppy with any region now combined with Bandle City, and you will have a pretty decent turn 3 and turn 4 play. Turn 3 Lulu into turn 4 Poppy is a very strong play as long as you have cheap units that you can play on turn 1 and turn 2. You can pair them up with Noxus, you can pair them up with Shadow Isles, you can pair them up with Bilgewater. There's a lot of possible pairings now that Poppy has been released. Her effect is very generic. It can apply to a lot of decks. Most of the time it will be nuts. Getting +1/+1 on your whole board can be game winning. Some decks just cannot handle the pressure of that. I really like Poppy's design as a champion. While she might be strong, maybe even too strong, she's not as powerful and as game-breaking as the first 2 cards in my list, which are Aloof Travelers and Otterpus. It's really cool that you can splash Poppy and other Yordle champions like Teemo or Lulu with any region right now. The fourth card in my list is Hidden Pathways. Hidden Pathways is a 5 mana burst spell that has a text, costs 2 less if you've created 2+ cards this game. Draw 2. So basically, this is a 3 mana draw 2. If you think about it, with Bandle City, you will be usually able to create 2 cards, at least 2 cards in the game. That's a super easy effect to activate. So this is basically a 3 mana draw 2. And 3 mana draw 2 is pretty powerful. Let's look at the other powerful draw tools in the game right now. Glimpse Beyond, for 2 mana, you kill a unit and you draw 2. By adding 1 more mana for Hidden Pathways, you just draw 2, not needing to kill a unit, so pretty powerful. Whispered Words is a 4 mana draw 2, but if you activate Reputation, it's a 2 mana draw 2. With the 4 mana draw 2, it's actually a lot playable, very comparable to Salvage, but with Hidden Pathways, it's just a 3 mana draw 2, which is pretty nuts if you think about it. Deep Meditation is another draw tool that's been used in Ionia, in Control decks, in Lee Sin decks. So Deep Meditation, very similar. It's a 5-cost burst spell that draws 2, but it costs 2 less if you cast 2 spells during the last turn, which can be pretty tricky to activate. In Ionia, you really have to plan ahead. But for Hidden Pathways, you don't really need to plan ahead. It should be very easy to create 2+ cards in the game and just draw 2. So this is a really powerful draw tool for Bandle City decks that can almost fit into any type of decks. Because we've seen aggro decks like fearsome aggro decks, they use Glimpse Beyond. We've seen mid-range decks like Reputation or Ashes LeBlanc, they use Whispered Words. And for control decks like Karma Ezreal, they use Deep Meditation. So mentioning these 3 cards, we compare Hidden Pathways to them. Hidden Pathways is very near, if not better, than the 3 cards that I mentioned. So a 3 mana draw 2, definitely super playable for Bandle City decks. And finally, the last card in my list is Stinky Womp, which is a 1 mana 2/1 card from PNZ. So this is not a Bandle City card, although it's included in the Bandle City expansion. It has the text, "Last breath, create a copy of me in the enemy deck with 2 poison puff cups attached." I haven't really seen a lot of people that are talking about this card, but I think this is a pretty powerful card that you can use in PNZ aggro decks because it's a 1 mana 2/1, which means it's a decent body on board to have on turn 1. And on top of that, its Last Breath allows you to disrupt your opponent's draw. If you're up against control or mid-range decks and they draw this, they don't really want that because they would want to draw their other cards, preferably their anti-aggro cards or any card in order to match your aggression. But with Stinky Womp, not only that their draw is disrupted, you also deal 2 damage to face. So yeah, I think this is a pretty underrated card in terms of the cards that I've seen that people are saying are strong. So yeah, I think that this card can be used in like Piltover End Zone plus Noxus burn decks. It might be used in Teemo aggro decks, Teemo with Shadow Isles, or Teemo with Noxus. This deck has a lot of utility. In terms of power level, I would say that this card is pretty comparable to other powerful 1-drops like Legion Saboteur and Perspet. It's a 1 mana 2/1 that can sometimes deal additional damage to your opponent's face. Overall, a lot of the cards that have been revealed so far, a lot of the more powerful cards are very annoying to play against. I think Riot is making the theme of Bandle City the annoying region to play against. But I'm really afraid that the prank mechanic and Aloof Travelers might be too overtuned. But knowing Riot, they will most likely nerf these cards maybe 2 weeks or 1 month after the expansion. And I'm really looking forward to more champion reveals. There's actually lots of cards that have been released that seem really fun to play. I might make a new video on that, maybe top 5 most fun cards in the Bandle City expansion. But for this video, we have the 5 strongest cards. I really think that the last 3 cards, Poppy, Hidden Pathways, and Stinky Womp, are the right level in terms of power. I am just worried about the first 2 cards. Hopefully, they don't make the game unfun to play. What do you think of my cards? Do you agree? Did I miss out on anything? If I did, make sure to tell me in the comment section. I'd love to discuss these types of things to you. Also, don't forget to leave me a follow on twitch.tv/Raphterra. I am playing live there if you want to catch me live, if you want to see me playing off-meta and meta decks, leave me a follow. And with that, I hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope that you have a nice day. Bye-bye.